I have largely ignored the case of Dominick Black throughout this time that I've been talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case. I've never really found it to be all that intriguing in terms of the complexity of the law and all that kind of things, but one of my YouTube commenters has been working that one hard. He's absolutely convinced that Dominick Black is going to go up the creek for I don't know how many years and stuff. So I decided to look into it a little bit more deeply. And what I found was a very similar case. However, I want you to hang around to the very end. And at that point, I think you're going to be in for a little bit of a surprise. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
Okay, so here is the case that we're talking about. Two individuals charged with firearm violation, conspiracy in connection with straw purchase of gun. And I remember this case vaguely. It came on the news. It was kind of national news for a day, and then it kind of disappeared. This occurred back in 2019. Firearm was used in the death of University of Utah student. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this. A federal indictment unsealed Wednesday afternoon charges two individuals with violations of federal law involving the alleged straw purchase of a Beretta handgun. The gun was purchased from a federal firearms dealer in Salt Lake City. The firearm remained in the possession of one of the defendants until October 17, 2018, when he loaned it to an acquaintance, identified in the indictment as MSR, and this was a guy named by the name of Melvin Rowland. Melvin used that gun to kill a University of Utah student. Okay, and notice there's a similarity here. That fact that the gun was purchased and the gun was later used in a homicide. Now, whether it was a justified homicide in the case of Kyle or not, that's another matter. We've been banding around with that for a long time. In this case here, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he murdered this student, and then he turned the gun on himself and shot himself. So there's little doubt about what took place. The indictment alleges Sarah Emily Lady. How would you like to be a male with the last name of Lady? I don't know. That would be really tough. But this one's a female, so she lucked out there. The indictment alleges that Sarah Lady, age 24, and Nathan Vogel knowingly made false and fictitious statements intended to deceive a firearms dealer while purchasing the firearm. Okay, so starting to sound a little bit like Dominick Black and Kyle Rittenhouse. The indictment alleges Lady falsely answered yes to a question asking whether she was the actual buyer of the firearm, knowing that Vogel was the intended actual purchaser of the firearm. And we talked about, whether Dominick really bought the gun for Kyle, because Dominick didn't give the gun to Kyle. Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit. A straw purchase happens when someone lies on an ATF form to purchase a firearm for an individual who is prohibited from owning a gun or an individual who does not want to wait for the completion of a background check. Lying on federal forms to purchase a firearm for someone is illegal. Okay, we know that. Now the question is Dominick Black really a purchaser of the gun for Kyle, or did he buy the gun with the purpose later of giving it to Kyle? We'll read on. Lauren McCluskey's death was tragic and heartbreaking. We join so many others in offering our condolences to her family and friends, U.S. Attorney John Huber said to John Huber. Wait. This is all part of a conspiracy, guys. Anthony Huber's dad is John Huber, and he's the U.S. attorney that was involved in this case. Oh, it all makes sense now. Oh, we all had it wrong. While we cannot change what happened that October night in Salt Lake City, we can say that without the conduct alleged in this indictment, this particular handgun would not have been used to take Lauren's life. I wonder if W is John Huber's middle initial. That would be weird. The laws of the United States offer safety and predictability when we abide by them. Straw purchases are prohibited under federal law for a reason. Huber said, when a firearm is unlawfully acquired or transferred, the firearm ends up in the wrong hands and violence brings tragedy to our community. Okay, so again, there's nothing here that separates this incident here from Dominick and Kyle yet. We'll just continue reading on here. This indictment does not allege that the defendants were responsible for Miss McCluskey's death. Lying on a federal form to purchase a firearm has very serious consequences. The ATF form clearly states that making a false statement or misrepresenting oneself is punishable as a felony under federal law. Again, nothing here is surprising. The consequences of lying goes beyond imprisonment for the individual who fills out the form. It puts the community and public at risk. Our condolences go out to Lauren's family and friends who have suffered because of conduct related to the straw purchase alleged in this indictment. Okay, so this is where it starts getting a little more interesting. The charges allege Lady and Vogel conspired to defraud the United States by impeding and obstructing the functions of the ATF in enforcing federal firearms laws and preventing illegal firearms trafficking through the straw purchase of a firearm. And so the very fact that these two people agreed to do this means that they are involved in a conspiracy. And so Kyle and Dominick could be charged for conspiracy. The indictment alleges Lady and Vogel made false statements on the ATF form to circumvent Vogel's background check and waiting period because Vogel wanted the firearm immediately. Vogel was generally discharged from the Army and was fearful that he could not purchase a firearm without a delay, the indictment alleges. I don't think a person should lose their right to own a firearm just because they've been generally discharged from the Army. Between August and September, Lady and Vogel made plans to meet at a firearm store in Salt Lake City so Vogel could identify the firearm he wished to own and Lady could purchase it for him. The indictment alleges Lady and Vogel text messaged 13 times to arrange the meeting. Okay, so one of the things that they're going to be looking for with Kyle and Dominick was there any kind of correspondence that indicated that Dominick was buying the gun for Kyle. When they got to the store on September 8th, 2018, Lady and Vogel looked at several firearms and Vogel asked questions of the salesperson. Vogel pointed out the Beretta handgun, asked the salesperson questions about the firearm, and handled it. Now, again, one of the things I said was that they're going to be interviewing the Ace hardware store clerk about what took place between Dominick and Kyle, if he can remember. He gave the Beretta back and moved to the ammunition area of the business to obtain ammunition for the firearm. So there's pretty clear indications here that this gun was purchased for Vogel. Shortly after, Lady began the purchase of the Beretta, answering yes to the question asking if she is the actual transferee buyer of the firearm. The firearms licensee conducted a background check on Lady that took about 10 minutes and allowed her to purchase the firearm and ammunition. Immediately after the purchase, Lady handed the firearm to Vogel, the indictment alleges. Lady was arrested Tuesday in Utah and had an initial appearance Wednesday afternoon before U.S. Magistrate Judge Brooke C. Wells. She entered a plea of not guilty to the charges in the indictment. A 3-day jury trial was set for May 20th, 2019. She was released on conditions of supervised release, including no contact with the co-defendant in the case and a prohibition on possession of firearms or weapons. An arrest warrant is pending for Vogel. Now, let's read more. The maximum potential penalty for a false statement during the acquisition of a firearm is 10 years in federal prison. The conspiracy could add a potential 5-year sentence. So we're looking at 15 years. In this case here, the handgun that was purchased did end up killing 2 people. It ended up with a murder of a student and a suicide. And in Kyle's case, the gun was used in the shooting of 3 people, with 2 people dying. Now, in this case here, she bought the gun for Vogel and then immediately after the purchase gave it to Vogel. So he takes the gun. In the case of Kyle, the gun is kept at Dominick's place. Dominick didn't give Kyle the gun until that night in August when Kyle took the gun and went to the Kenosha shootings, and we all know what happened around that time. What is Dominick's defense going to be here? Well, unlike this case here, Dominick, again, didn't give the gun to Kyle immediately. He kept it. The idea was that they were going to transfer the title over, Okay, now whether that is a straw purchase, we've gone back and forth on that. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that it is, and frankly, I think that it could be. I think that the state is probably going to say that that is a straw purchase. What's the defense going to say? Well, they'll say otherwise. But you know what? I really do think that Dominick could get convicted of this event, and possibly Kyle too. Remember, there's a conspiracy here between the two of them, according to the definition, and the fact that they agreed to do this together. Now, I went and tried to find out whatever happened to these two people. You have the purchaser and the benefactor of the gun. Whatever happened to them? Well, let's go ahead and read some more. We go to WikiBios. I don't even know what the hell that is. Who was Melvin Rowland? Melvin Rowland was the Utah man accused of killing University of Utah athlete Lauren McCluskey in 2018. He was found dead in a church after McCluskey, his former girlfriend, was murdered. Rowland, a 37-year-old registered sex offender, was abusive during his relationship with McCluskey and stalked her after they broke up before killing her on the Salt Lake City University's campus. There's no doubt that he killed her. I mean, they have him on video camera, and they cornered him in a church, and he blew his brains out. After the 21-year-old McCluskey was found dead of a gunshot wound in her car outside of her residence hall, police launched a manhunt for Rowland after identifying him as a suspect, according to a University of Utah police report on the murder. McCluskey, who was on the University of Utah Utes track team, had reported Rowland to campus police, saying he had threatened, harassed, and stalked her and had extorted her for money in exchange for not releasing compromising photos of her. According to police statements, McCluskey was confronted and shot by Rowland on October 22, 2018, about 8:20 p.m. Her body was found just before 10 p.m. Salt Lake City police officers spotted Rowland on foot about 12:45 a.m. on October 23rd. According to police, the officers followed Rowland and he entered the Trinity AME Church on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Rowland then shot himself inside the church. His death was ruled a suicide. Okay, so there's really no doubt about it. The gun that was used in the purchase, the straw purchase, was used to carry out 2 homicides. And I know a lot of you anti-Kyles are going, well, only one was a homicide, the other one was a suicide. Look up the definition of homicide and quit bugging me. Okay, so Rowland went on a date at a restaurant, and this is kind of interesting. After shooting and killing McCluskey, Rowland called a woman to pick him up, according to the University of Utah police report. He had met the woman on a dating app. According to police, Rowland and the woman went out to dinner together after the shooting. This is really strange. The woman has not been identified and was not charged in connection with the shooting. According to police, Rowland and the woman also visited the state capitol together after the shooting and went back to her apartment, where Rowland took a shower. She dropped him off at a coffee shop in the hours before police located him. The woman called police after seeing Rowland's photo on the news. At a press conference in the days after the shooting, then University of Utah Police Chief Dale Brophy told reporters, "I can't fathom how anybody with a conscience could murder their girlfriend and then go have dinner with somebody else and act like nothing happened." So the guy's a little bit of a psychopath. Not even a little bit. Now we're going to talk about the horrible things that are going to happen to these two people over this straw purchase. Now keep in mind, it is a felony. It's also a federal offense. Okay. And that has consequences, of course. And we're going to be assuming here that Dominick Black and Kyle Rittenhouse are going to be facing the consequences for this straw purchase. Whether or not it was truly a straw purchase, you guys can argue that, okay? So let's read what happened. While Rowland's death meant he was never charged or imprisoned for murdering McCluskey, others did face consequences. Rowland's friend Nathan Vogel, he's the one that was the benefactor of the handgun. He's the one that gave the gun to Rowland to murder that girl, pleaded guilty in June 2019 to gun charges. And I should be a little bit more careful. He didn't give the gun to Rowland to murder the girl. He did not know that was going to happen. Vogel loaned an illegally purchased gun to Rowland, which he then used to shoot and kill McCluskey. He was sentenced to, drum roll, 3 years of probation. No jail. No prison. No chain gang activity. No prison guard beatings. 3 years probation. But, the straw purchaser, the person who bought the gun, that person must be facing some serious consequences. Okay, so here, Vogel's friend Sarah Lady, who bought the gun for him, was also charged. According to court records, the case against Lady was dismissed in September 2020 after she completed a 12-month diversion program. She's not even been convicted. So, and I've said this many times. I don't know how many times I've tried to tell people. They start to fantasize about these maximum sentences. They think 10 years plus another 5 years. He's going to be in prison for 15 years. Guys, these are young kids who have no priors. They're not going to get the maximum sentence. These people were adults who should have known better by a wide margin. And look at their sentences. Neither of these people is going to serve any time in jail. It's not even clear to me that Sarah Lady, who bought the gun for Vogel, was even convicted. I'm not even sure she has a felony on her record. Vogel probably does. But 3 years of probation? To be honest, a long sentence is not going to be very useful anyway. The defense is going to make a very strong claim that there's no point in imposing any kind of prison sentence because it serves no purpose. Does anybody really think that Dominick is a violent person, that we have to put him away for a long period of time to keep him from attacking people? The same for Kyle. Does anybody think that we need a long prison sentence to dissuade these guys from ever committing crimes in the future? They're no more inclined to be criminal. They're no more inclined to be criminally active than anybody else. Prison sentence isn't going to rehabilitate them. There's really nothing to rehabilitate. If anything, a prison sentence would only just ruin their chances of actually becoming productive members of society. In short, a prison sentence for Dominick and Kyle over the purchase of the gun, I'm not talking about the shootings, I'm talking about the purchase of the gun, serves no real purpose, and the judge is going to agree with that. Again, we're probably looking at probation. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.